Hi, I'm Danny Duchamp. Welcome to my shitty Honda Fit. Cheers. So, there's a common fear that I've seen while arguing with people online. Something that I do probably more than enough. And it's the fear of being seen as too extreme, of taking a position that is too far to either end of the scale on a given issue. I understand the fear. Basically, you're worried that by fighting your enemy too hard, you will become your enemy. I want to explain why this is not something that you should worry about. Basically, I want to tell you why you should be an extremist. First, some examples.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, widely claimed by atheists, is actually an agnostic.
You see this fear in action famously with those who call themselves agnostics instead of atheists. When asked whether they believe in a God, they say, "I don't know," which is a ridiculous answer. That's not the question you were asked. First of all, nobody knows anything 100% if we're going to be finicky about it. But either way, you were asked whether you believe in a God and you answered whether or not you know. It's a different question. But since you answered, do you believe with anything other than yes, I will assume that the answer is no. You don't have an active belief in God, which would make you an atheist. That's all atheism means. The problem is that they feel a stigma about being an atheist. Lots of people have frankly lied about what they believe that atheism is, saying that atheism is just another religion. So they call themselves agnostic so that they can say, well, not us. We're not those crazy atheists. That's the next label down you want. Just stop picking on us. Instead of defending their own fucking position. Another place you see this is when people, usually anti-feminists, are advocating for men's rights. For example, they'll say that men are treated unfairly in custody battles. They'll turn around after doing this advocacy for men's rights and say, but I'm not a men's rights advocate.
Men are falling dramatically behind, and the demographic group
You're such an MRA, go on.
No, I'm not an MRA,
Oh,
but I'm not an MRA, but they are right about most of this stuff.
Those guys are an internet hate mob. Who told you they were an internet hate mob? Was it feminists? What did you expect them to say? But no, they can feel that stigma. They can feel it there. And they want to be able to pretend that they can position themselves in between advocating for men's rights and not advocating for men's rights. Somehow that works in their minds. So don't get me wrong, I'm somewhat uncomfortable with the labels atheist because I don't think that your position on that one issue is that important, and the label men's rights advocate because I consider myself more of a human rights advocate. But in both cases, when I'm asked those questions, the answer is definitely not no. Am I an atheist? Well, the answer is definitely not no. Am I a men's rights advocate? I advocate for men's rights, so the answer is definitely not no. With a simpler example, it might be a bit more obvious. Okay, so say someone thinks that 2 plus 2 equals 4.
2 plus 2 is 4. 2 plus 2 is 4. I can see why this is so popular.
And another person comes along and says, no, 2 plus 2 equals 6. Then you get a third person come along and see that argument between them and decide, well, the right answer must be somewhere in the middle, the happy middle ground. So I believe that 2 plus 2 equals 5. Is that the third guy, being reasonable and moderate? No, he's just fucking wrong. He's just as wrong as a 2 plus 2 equals 6 guy. Well, I guess he's one closer, but he's still wrong. It doesn't matter how moderate and balanced he might feel. The answer is the first guy was right, and the third guy was just wrong. And by siding in the middle, you aren't being moderate, you're just being also wrong. Now, from the title there, you were probably expecting me to talk about religious extremism. It does apply there too. For example, a moderate Muslim is simply one who claims to believe in Allah and then disobeys him. The moderate ones aren't more reasonable. They're, if anything, less reasonable. Just because their position is more advantageous to society, because they don't blow shit up, doesn't mean that if we assume that Islam is correct, that they're the ones in the right. No, if Islam is correct, the extremists are right. It's also, by the way, on a side note, a very good argument for truth being fucking important. The only reason that the Muslims blowing shit up is a bad thing is because they are incorrect factually. Keep that in mind. Often you'll hear people use the horseshoe theory when talking about this, when justifying this mad rush to the perceived middle ground, which, if you don't know, is the idea that the extremes of any topic will be closer together than the middle of that topic, like a horseshoe. At this point and this point, closer together than... You get the idea. Now, the middle, therefore, is shown as a reasonable, balanced position, and the extremes are extreme. But one example we could look at when trying to figure out if this is a reasonable model would be the white nationalists versus like the modern racist SJW, Black Lives Matter people. Now, they seem to be at either ends of the spectrum, don't they? Either ends. And they do have some similarities. They're both fucking racists. But that's just because we're looking at the wrong scale. Instead of asking the question, which race is best, and plotting people along that scale, we should be asking, should you treat people as these big amorphous blobs? And plotting people along that scale. And on that scale, both the white nationalists and Black Lives Matterers are way down the end at the extreme of, yes, we should treat people as amorphous blobs and completely ignore their individuality, and at the other end is egalitarianism. It is extreme egalitarianism. You should be an extremist for good ideas. You should be an extremist for egalitarianism, humanism, rationalism. These are good things, and you don't need to water them down. Actually, that's the takeaway here. Judge your positions on reason and evidence, not on how extreme or out there the position that reason and evidence leads you to is, or is perceived as. Those things are distractions, those stigmas. Stand up for the truth as best you can, and never mind the consequences. And never ever think that you always have to find the happy medium between two issues. Sometimes one side is just plain wrong, and the other side is just fucking right. Alright, so that's the point that I had to make. Get out of my shitty Honda Fit. Bye! Thanks for watching. If you can think of another example of an issue where the extreme position is the right one, let me know in the comments. I also do video responses, so if you would like to give me a video to respond to, post a link in the comments as well. And finally, if you liked seeing me do this philosophical analysis of political issues, you'll probably like my video on the difference between groups and attributes, link on screen now and in the description box. Oh, and of course remember to subscribe and like and follow me on Twitter and carve my name into your forehead.